on that point?
Anyone?
Tu Hazim dah tanya dah. Anyone? Kita refresh sikit what we have learned last week.
Is it Andre Gertrude de Souza, Madam?
Betul Alia. Andre di Souza tu, Andre di Souza tu decided that if you are using a wrong form, it does not invalidate the transaction. The only thing is that the developer had committed an offence under the HDR, so the sale and purchase agreement is still valid, and all the parties have actually rights to be protected under the SMP, walaupun dia adalah borang yang salah. Okay, so tadi we are talking about types of SMP. Apa lagi yang kita perlu tahu when we buy property from the developer?
Minister have power to modify the provision of the standard SNP, sale and purchase.
Okay, Minister have power to modify the provisions of the SMP. Okay, apa contoh modification yang selalunya Minister buat?
Okay, anyone?
Dia main passing button tu. Okay, anyone?
Extending the time for the developer to complete the something like that lah.
Something like what? Kena panggil nama ya. Ridwan. Ridwan boleh sambung sikit yang Hazim cakap tadi? Haili.
Basically minister boleh membenarkan developer kalau tak boleh siapkan projek tu within stipulated time.
Okay. But okay, so there is a provision, thank you Suhaili, there is a provisions in the HDA which said that minister can modify the provisions. But ada satu case yang kata nowadays this provisions is ultra vires. Apa case tu?
Ang Ming Lee.
Ang Ming Lee kata the minister actually bukan, it's not that the minister don't have the power, tapi because in that case the extension of time was given by the controller. Sebenarnya power tu ada dekat minister, tapi the case also said that section 11 regulation 11 2 or 3 tu is invalid. Sekarang ni maksudnya bila pemaju nak mohon untuk extension of time, the minister cannot grant that extension of time. What is the effect of granting the extension of time to the purchaser?
Boleh claim compensation.
Boleh claim compensation. Contohnya, the property must be completed within 24 months, but due to certain reason, the developer think that they cannot complete it within 24 months, so they apply for the extension of time because the minister has power to modify the provisions, because provisions too is stated in the statutory agreement. So they modify the provisions. So let's say the minister granted the application by the developer to extend the completion date. Instead of 24 months, maybe the developer requests for another 6 months to complete. So what will be the effect of this extension?
Extension.
Dayana?
Extension tu dia akan effect buyer's interest. So regulation tu dia protect buyer's interest untuk claim late payment. Itulah.
Okay, so bila ada extension of time, can they apply for the late payment interest, the late ascertained damages LAD tu?
Boleh.
Boleh.
Kalau ada extension tak boleh sebab masih
Najiha? Boleh ke tak boleh Najiha?
kalau ada extension daripada minister, kalau minister bagi extension dia jadi macam tak boleh lah home buyer ni untuk claim the late payment compensation tu kan.
Yeah, that is the effect. That's why purchasers does not actually happy when the developer apply for extension, because the late ascertained damages, the denda lambat bayar tu will start from the end of the completion period. So kalau tadi 24 months completion period, kalau let's say 24 months to end hari ni, so esok the purchaser is already entitled to the late ascertained damages, ganti rugi lambat siap tu. But if the developer manage to get the extension for another 6 months, so 24 campur 6, meaning after the 6 month period tu barulah purchaser boleh mohon untuk LAD tu, entitled to LAD. So dia walaupun property tak siap, dia tak boleh claim LAD. So this is actually affect the buyer's interest lah, because 6 month tu dia kena bayar bank lagi, dia kena sewa rumah lagi, tapi dia tak boleh claim penalty. Sedangkan in the SMP it stated that the property has to be completed, delivered to them by 24 months or 36 months. So that is the effect of the extension of time. Okay, apa lagi yang penting dalam when we buy property from the developer ni?
Kita kena tahu the defect liability period.
Okay.
So bila defect liability period tu start, which is lepas dapat vacant possession, dan bila defect liability period tu expired, dan apa situasi-situasi yang boleh invalidate istilah dia. Tentu boleh merosakkan kita punya defect liability. Contohnya renovation. Okay. Okay, selain daripada tu, sewa nak lagi.
Okay, sambung.
Kita perlu tahu restriction in interest. Dalam bahasa Melayu dia, sekatan-sekatan kepentingan. Jadi, kalau ada macam kita nak beli tanah, kita nak beli property, ada lawyer, kita minta advice tu, so lawyer akan check dekat property tu ada tak restriction of interest. Selalunya kalau rumah baru, tak ada restriction of interest ni. Tapi mana tahu kan? Mana tahu.
Thank you Imran. So Imran dah jawab tadi. The another things is that we need to know ialah defect liability period, because biasanya klien akan consult kita once dia dapat kunci tu, so dia akan tanya lagi kita when they go and view the house, inspect the house, then they found something defect at the house, so they will come back to the lawyer and ask what they can do if the property is not as per specification in the SMP. So how long is the defect liability period? Laila pula jawab. Berapa lama defect liability period? How long do you entitled to defect liability period ni? Alia Abdul Jalil. Kita dah belajar ni dalam land law tu, HDA dulu kita ada belajar. I think last week pun mungkin ada mention about how long is the defect liability period.
24.
Okay, siapa yang jawab tu?
24 months.
24 months, correct 24 months. So defect liability period dia 24 months. Nanti kita akan tengok dia start daripada bila, nanti kita akan bincang. Sebab ada a few different views by the court lah when the defect liability period start. 24 months tu start daripada tarikh apa. Okay, so ada a few other things that is important for you to understand. Then I really hope that you all read the clauses in the Schedule G or Schedule H to know the important provisions in the SMP tu, Meaning that is very important. I hope, I tak tahu sama ada Puan Hafizah nanti akan cover that part or not untuk tutorial session. Okay, so done revision. So we are now tadi about restriction interest. Restriction interest ni kalau from buying from developer, biasanya developer first hand sale, developer yang akan apply for the consent to transfer tu en bloc. Dia mohon kepada semua unit tu. Because the application for the consent to transfer is the duty of the vendor, or in this case is the developer lah. So dia akan mohon blanket consent daripada pejabat tanah untuk ke semua unit yang dia akan jual. Kalau property tu with title, then ada restriction interest. So purchaser dia tak perlu mohon lah. That is the part of the developer. Okay, for today we are going to continue with the second part of the sale and purchase of first-hand property. But today we are going to look at, we buy property from non-housing developer. Non-housing developer. So, saya dah share slide dekat files tu tadi. Okay. Boleh nampak slide?
Boleh.
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 Okay. So today we're looking at buying from non-housing developer. So last week we have actually discussed about who is housing developer, what are the criteria to be included under the category of housing developer. They must actually build more than 4 units of houses, and they are building actually a residential property. So residential property. So if you are buying from outside this category, meaning you are buying from a developer who built a house less than 5 units, or you are buying a property which is not a a residential property, you are buying a property from non-housing developer. So maknanya you beli rumah, pemaju ni dia bina rumah 3 unit, 4 unit. So dia tak tertakluk kepada Housing Development Act. So meaning the SMP, the process of buy and sell is not governed by the Housing Development Act. So the developer and the purchaser are free to enter into their own contract. Ni they draft their own SMP, they determine how the purchase price is going to be paid, what are the amount of deposit that need to be paid, when the property should be handed over, and so on. So this is the difference between you are buying from housing developer and you are buying from non-housing developer. Okay, so the second type is where you buy property which is not a residential property, or partly residential and partly accommodation. Contohnya ialah you buy property under the category of commercial building, shop office, shop lot, SOVO. SOVO tu dia ada macam two features. Nanti kita akan tengok factory, warehouse, shopping mall. So all these which is not residential category, they are not governed by the Housing Development Act. So your agreement, whatever transaction are regulated under the Contract Acts. That meaning the terms and condition of the sale and purchase are regulated under the Contract Acts. Okay. So this is some of the gambar lah. Small office, home office. Kalau you tengok kat sini, dia ada satu unit yang divided into 2 compartment. Part of it is you ada tempat macam living room and ada tempat tidur, dan you ada juga tempat you bekerja. Small office, home office. Kalau ini small office, virtual office, SOVO, this type of property dia tak ada provide living room or your bedroom. Dia memang betul-betul bercirikan office, commercial office. But it is still a small office yang biasanya constructed by the developer in town center lah. This is actually a minimized space. Especially nowadays, macam more transaction or commercial transaction is done online, so the business need only a small space to operate their business. Dia orang tak perlu rumah, kedai, gudang dan sebagainya, because all the items tu you display online. You tak perlu ada ruang yang besar untuk display all your items and merchandise. So that's why this type of properties or this type of development are becoming in trend lah by the developer. Okay, now we are going to look at the differences between residential and commercial property. Residential and commercial. Sekejap saya besarkan slide. Okay. Okay, so this is the differences between residential and commercial. So you need to know this because sometimes you need to advise your client on what are the things that they need to do if they buy residential and what they need to know when they buy commercial property. So now we are looking at the few categories or few angles of the property. The first one kita tengok type dia. Residential title ni walaupun dia stratified title, dia kan tengok type dia adalah purely residential, flat, apartment, condominium. So dia purely residential. Tapi kalau kita tengok dia service apartment or SOHO ni, dia adalah residential property built on commercial title. Commercial title. Last week I have mentioned that categories of land ada 3, agriculture, building and industrial. So building category tu divided into 2 types, two zoning, dipanggil tu zoning, residential zoning dengan commercial zoning. So service apartment and SOHO ni, it is a residential property built on commercial title. So service apartment is for dwelling only. SOHO can be used for dwelling and commercial purpose. So dia ada hybrid dekat sini. Dia rumah tapi dibina di atas tanah komersial. Kalau kategori yang tadi residential tu, dia rumah dan dibina di atas tanah residential. Yang ni dia rumah tapi dibina di atas tanah komersial. So purpose use of the building, kalau service apartment memang untuk tempat tinggal sahaja. Kalau you all biasa tengok service apartment, this is for dwelling only. Dia tak ada nature untuk buat office. But SOHO can be used for dwelling and also commercial purpose. Development may comprise commercial components such as retail units, offices and hotel. So kalau we look at this type of development, kat atas tu rumah, kat bawah tu ialah purely commercial. Ada kedai, ada office, ada hotel. So tapi atas tu ialah residential. Okay, another type of development ialah purely commercial. Maksudnya bangunan atas tanah tu ialah commercial purpose, tanah tu juga is a category of commercial. So atas commercial, bawah commercial. Yang tadi atas residential, bawah commercial. Yang the other one ialah atas residential, bawah pun residential. Okay, so for this, the third category, SOHO, solo and so on. This is the the commercial name given by the developer. Small office, virtual office, small office, flexible office, small office, leisure office, solo. Not designated for dwelling. Macam gambar yang saya kata tadi, dia tak ada elemen dwelling kat situ, tempat tinggal. Development may comprise commercial components such as retails, retails, units, offices and hotel. Approved business only. So ini use of the building. Okay. So tadi kita faham ada beberapa jenis kategori. Yang satu rumah, bangunan pun kediaman, tanah pun dalam kategori kediaman residential. bangunan kediaman tapi dibina di atas bersekali dengan bangunan komersial. Dan tadi satu lagi ialah bangunan komersial, tanah pun komersial. Okay. Now we are looking at the differences. Yang kedua ialah utility rates, tax and fees. For residential title, macam rumah-rumah kita ni, assessment fees and utility charges are at domestic rates. Ialah untuk rate dia, kadar cukai dia lah kadar kediaman. Kadar kediaman. Assessment fees untuk yang kedua, commercial title, assessment fees and utility charges at a commercial rates higher than the domestic rate. So untuk orang yang beli service apartment and SOHO ni, the disadvantages ni ialah walaupun nature dia ialah rumah, tapi because they are built on the commercial land, so dia punya rates tu, cukai pintu, cukai tanah, electricity, semua tu ialah commercial rate. Commercial rate. So this has been quite an issue lah. Because purchaser sometimes dia tak tahu, dia ingat dia beli rumah, so dia entitled to the residential rate, tapi bila sampai bill tu nampak mahal. Only they discovered that their property, since it is under commercial title, so they are subjected to commercial rate. So, but the current practice ialah developer akan mohon untuk convert the electricity tariff to residential rate. Dia orang akan mohon untuk unit-unit yang di atas tu ditukar kepada residential tariff. So ada satu proses lain lah. Then untuk yang kategori ketiga yang purely commercial ni, dia memang tak ada issue because assessment fees, utility charges commercial rate higher than domestic rate. So ada tiga keadaan. Yang ni memang ikut residential rate, yang ni commercial rate kena mohon untuk tukar kepada residential rate. Yang ini memanglah commercial rate. Okay. Untuk real property gains tax punya isu pula, untuk residential property ni, everyone is entitled to once in lifetime RPGT exemption. Maksudnya, when we sell a property, contohnya kita ada 2 buah rumah, then we want to sell these houses, so once in a lifetime, kita boleh mohon kepada stamp duty office untuk dapatkan exemption. Contohnya kita jual rumah pertama, kita boleh mohon exemption untuk dikecualikan daripada membayar tax, real property gains tax tu. Ataupun kita nak simpan this once in a lifetime privilege ni untuk rumah yang kedua. So normally kalau dia property real estate property, then biasanya dia orang akan minta rumah yang paling mahal lah. Maksudnya keuntungan yang you dapat daripada menjual rumah tu paling mahal. Maksudnya the highest purchase price lah selalunya. Tapi kalau kita tak ada banyak rumah, mungkin kita boleh enjoy di once in a lifetime untuk sekali sahajalah. Okay. Tapi for the commercial property, the service apartment and SOHO, they also enjoy once in a lifetime RPGT exemption, because dia are dalam kategori residential. Tapi untuk commercial property, there is no such thing as once in a lifetime RPGT exemption. Maksudnya, dia tidak ada this privilege to get an exemption from real property gains tax when they sell the unit to the other party. Nanti we will learn in detail what is RPGT and what is RPGT exemption. Okay. So itu yang kedua. So boleh nampak the differences between residential property and the hybrid and also the pure commercial property. Okay. In terms of legal protection and SPA, the legal protection and SPA, and the residential title is under the jurisdiction of Housing Development Act. Use the standard SPA regulated under the SDA. Home buyers can bring dispute to the tribunal for home buyers claim for defective workmanship from the developer during the 24 months of defect liability period. So these are the things enjoyed by the residential purchaser. So they are well regulated under specific act, which is Housing Development Act. So SMP are regulated, their claims, they can go to tribunal, they are entitled to 24 months defect liability period and so on. Okay. So now we move on to the second category, which is the service apartment and SOHO. Since they are in the category of residential, their sale and purchase agreements still regulated under the Housing Development Act. So they use the standard SPA regulated under the HDA. Home buyer can still bring dispute to tribunal. They are also enjoy the 24 months defect liability period because they are using the statutory SMP. Okay. And the last category, the pure commercial property, ni shop office, small office, virtual office, those commercial property, kedai dan sebagainya, they do not come under the jurisdiction of HDA. No statutory SPA based on agreement between the parties cannot bring the dispute to the tribunal for home buyer's claim, but they can bring dispute to the strata management tribunal if the dispute is related to management of the strata scheme, because normally this type of development they are in the strata scheme, ni rumah yang bangunan yang bertingkat-tingkat lah. Dispute will be settled in courts or other mediums agreed by the parties. Contohnya dalam SMP dia, SPA dia, they have provided that all the dispute between the parties have to be settled through arbitration and so on. Diorang boleh letak macam tu lah sebab their contract, whatever between the parties are based on the agreement of both parties. Okay, lastly kita tengok density. Biasanya untuk residential ni dia lower density. Dia ada certain requirements lah untuk housing area. Housing area ni untuk town and planning dia akan ada macam certain jumlah penduduk, then they have to provide schools, malls dan sebagainya. Yang basic amenities tu kena have to be provided by the developer if it is a residential title. So depending on the macam local authorities lah, dia orang ada guidelines. Kalau this size of development ada berapa unit rumah, ada berapa orang penduduk ke, then these are the facilities that need to be provided by the developer. Kalau kita tengok service apartment and SOHO ni, because they are biasanya integrated development yang ke atas tu, naik ke atas, so dia the development tu quite in a higher density lah, lebih padat. Begitu dengan commercial title, because they want to maximize the use of the land. So, because biasanya commercial title ni dia biasanya duduk di tengah-tengah bandar atau di pinggir bandar juga, tapi the price of the land is of course higher than the residential punya title. Okay, so far ada soalan untuk the difference between residential dengan commercial title?
Madam, I have questions. Apa yang dimaksudkan dengan under the jurisdiction of HDA and use the standard SPA regulated under HDA, because bukan ke tadi kalau macam kita beli property daripada non-developer, then the act that will be governed is Contract Act.
Okay, yang ni ialah residential yang kita kategorikan sebagai dia residential, dan dia adalah pemaju tu ialah maknanya build the development more than 4 units. Tapi kalau residential dan tapi bukan lebih daripada 4 unit tu, memang dalam kategori yang tadilah non-regulated by the HDA. Kat sini saya nak tunjuk beza di antara residential yang memang under HDA dan yang those type of property yang bukan under HDA. Boleh Syamil?
Kiranya yang this table ni referring to properties from the developer lah.
Yang kita beli dengan pemaju.
Okay, alright. Thank you.
Okay, ada soalan lain? Dia yang vague kategori ni ialah dekat yang tengah tu yang Soho, yang service apartment dengan Soho. Yang dua kategori yang tepi tu residential dengan commercial tu dia dah clear. Kalau residential lebih daripada 4 unit it comes under the HDA. Kalau yang ni pula commercial, memang dia pure commercial, tak ada element of residential or dwelling, memang dia kategori commercial dan they are not governed by HDA. So terms and conditions tu memang up to the parties to decide lah. Tapi kategori yang tengah tu dia akan selalu ada confusion sebab some buyers dia tak tahu yang dia beli property yang ingat okay beli rumah, beli Soho kan, beli rumah ataupun beli service apartment. So dia ingatkan itu memang kategori residential, they are entitled to the RPGT. RPGT tu yang boleh lah tarif yang sama dengan residential and so on. So itu yang akan jadi satu isu dekat situ. And some treatment given to Soho dengan service apartment ni pun berbeza-beza mengikut states. Ada state yang kata ini memang pure commercial. So dia tak entertain any exemption untuk dapat tarif yang ikut residential and so on. Ada state yang kata okay, masih dalam kategori residential boleh mohon untuk tukar tarif dan sebagainya. So kategori yang tengah tu selalu akan ada isu lah. Yang the other two tu is very clear. Okay. Okay, kalau tak ada soalan saya proceed. So this is how, however, ni adalah charges yang berbeza di antara residential dengan commercial. Utility bills charges are higher in commercial developments as compared to residential homes. Electricity bills for commercial developments are usually 30% higher than for residential developments. The rate for electricity can you boleh tengoklah daripada Tenaga Nasional punya website ni, saya ambil daripada satu ni lah. Assessment charge twice per year, ni cukai pintu. The assessment fee for commercial developments are higher than the residential developments at approximately 2.5 times the typical commercial rates. So dia memang berbeza. Quick rent charge once a year. The fees are also generally 2.5 times higher than the residential rates. So kalau contohnya rumah you, cukai tanahnya ialah RM100. So kalau you dalam kategori commercial, cukai tanah you mungkin dalam RM250. Macam itulah kot perbezaan dia. So they are at higher side. Internet rates, astro package semua pun commercial dengan residential dia ada different rates lah. Itu yang kita kena take note dan kita kena sometimes highlight to the clients lah kalau dia beli this kind of property. But of course ini pun insyaAllah akan ada amendment to the act because ada banyak confusion dekat bahagian tengah tadi. So the government actually looking into it. Okay. Administrative fees, transaction are subject to developer's consent. Okay. One important thing that we need to know when we buy property from non-housing developer ialah berkenaan dengan administrative fees. Administrative fees came into picture especially when you want to sell the property to the second buyer, meaning dah enter into a sub-sale transaction. Contohnya you dulu beli rumah ni daripada this developer, kedai ni daripada developer. So now you want to sell it to the new buyer. You A nak jual kepada B. Dan property yang dia nak jual ni ialah contohnya office. So for this kind of property, since they are not governed by the Housing Development Act, normally this is applicable for property which is yet to be issued with the title. Maksudnya property ni belum ada geran dia sendiri. So every time you want to sell to the subsequent purchaser, you need to get the consent from the developer. So contoh in this scenario, A dia ada satu unit pejabat, A want to sell this unit pejabat to B. So when A want to sell this unit pejabat to B, they have to actually inform and get consent from the developer that they want to sell this unit office to B. Why this is necessary? Because the property is still under master title, so the developer need to know that need to know that there are new buyers to the unit. Jadi setiap kali transaction kena notify and get consent from the developer. Okay, this process is not necessary if you sell a property under residential category. Under residential category, you don't need to get consent from the developer if you want to sell your house, your condominium, your flat, your apartment to the other party. You don't need to get the developer's consent. What you need is only to notify. Dia dua benda yang berbeza. Notification still is a must. Memaklumkan kepada pemaju tu mesti, tapi bukan untuk mendapat consent dia. So kalau yang commercial property ni atau non-residential property, consent developer still normally is a condition for the owner to sell the property to the party. So kalau kita tengok di bawah section 22D of the Housing Development Act, okay, dia dah do away with this requirement since 2007. Section 22D on the assignment, nanti boleh baca. Because kalau dulu-dulu when you want to sell your house, your apartment, your any residential unit pun, you must get consent from the developer. So in order for you to get consent from the developer, sometimes the developer impose a lot of conditions. Sometimes dia tak impose a lot of conditions pun, dia ada delay in the process. Lambat pemaju bagi response to your letter. So this actually cause a lot of difficulties in the conveyancing process. Sebab nak tunggu pemaju bagi makluman kepada lawyer about the particulars of the property tu, dia ambil masa. So it will delay the conveyancing process. So in 2007 they had made amendment to the Housing Development Act whereby untuk residential property there is no need to get the consent from the developer. You just need to notify the developer that you are selling this unit to a new buyer. So lawyer kena tulis surat kepada pemaju memaklumkan yang A ni dah enter into a sale and purchase agreement dengan B dan dia nak jual property ni, jadi dia minta pemaju untuk bagi the latest information about the unit and also about the title. So kalau you tengok section 22D tu ada a few confirmation yang developer has to give to the lawyer in this process. Sebabnya contohnya you buy the property in 2000. Now you want to sell the property in 2010. But until 2010, there is no individual title issued by the land office yet. So we do not know what happened in between these 10 years. Sama ada pemaju dah dapat individual title ke atau geran tu dah bertukar number and so on. So that's why we need to get the latest confirmation of the about the units and also about the title. Okay. So under the HDA Amendment 2007, it makes significant changes to the practice of conveyancing in relation to property without title. It removes one of the most time-consuming practical difficulties in conveyancing practice, meaning to get the consent from the developer. So nowadays, kalau you jual residential property, you tak perlu lagi dapat consent from the developer. You just only need to notify the developer. Okay, so what is the effect of Section 22D ni? The effect of Section 22D, only notice of assignment is required to be given to the housing developer at or after the completion of the sale and purchase between the vendor and the new purchaser. So in the process of selling the property, your lawyer need to give a notice to the developer informing that you are selling this property to a new person, then developer has to actually update their record to insert this new person as the latest owner of the property. Okay, so consent of the developer is not required. Consent tak perlu, cuma notification. The notice shall be accompanied by the documents and payments set out in section 22(2). Okay, A, B, C and D, A, B, and C ni. So some of the documents yang you kena enclose together with the notice tu ialah copy of SMP to prove that really you are selling this property to someone, and deed of assignment and other payment. Then the administrative fee for the issuance of confirmation shall not exceed RM50. So kalau dulu-dulu sebelum amendment 2007, not only the consent of the developer is required, then the developer, when they want to issue the consent, they impose sometime unreasonable fees. Contohnya nak keluarkan satu surat consent tu, they impose RM100, RM500. There is no specific fixed amount govern the administrative fee. But through the 22D tu, the amount shall not exceed RM50. The assignment will be effective from the date of the receipt of the notice by the housing developer. So once you as a lawyer send the notice of assignment to the developer about the transaction, so this assignment is effective when the developer receive the notice. Any developer who requires consent, impose any condition or fail to give any confirmation shall be guilty of an offence. So kalau ada pemaju yang keluarkan surat, minta macam-macam ataupun impose certain fees yang more than RM50, they have actually committed an offence and they are subjected to fine not less than 50,000 and not more than 100,000, or imprisonment for not exceeding 3 years or both. So this is very important section dalam HDA which actually helps the conveyancing process to be smoother than before. Okay, ini applicable untuk housing development, meaning buy and sell of residential property. But what happened to the commercial property? Untuk commercial property, they do not entitled to that. They do not enjoy the advantages of section 22D tu. So kalau you nak jual kedai atau you nak jual office, the developer can actually request for consent. And selalunya this one, they already embedded dalam the principle SMP yang awal tu. Contohnya dia akan letak kat situ, any subsequent assignment pending the issuance of title must get consent from the developer, then they are impose certain conditions. So this is what happen kalau commercial property. Meaning kalau you lawyer acting for your client, then your client actually nak jual office, you need to check pertamanya the principal SMP ada tak this condition, then if there is a condition inside, you need to get consent, then you can write to the developer asking for the consent from the developer for the subsequent sale of the property. Okay? Boleh faham tak section 22D tadi? Ada soalan? Tak ada?
Doktor, so untuk commercial tu kan doktor kata subject to condition daripada developer kan? So kalau developer kata tak payah consent, tak payah ke?
Kalau dalam SMP dia kata tak perlu consent, tapi notification tu masih kena bagi. Sebab kalau tidak ada tidak ada updated records lah in the developers punya register tu, siapa yang latest buyer, latest owner of the house. Okay?
Okay, thank you doktor.
Okay, now
Doktor,
kita tengok dua kes ni. Dia ada soalan lain?
Doktor, saya nak tanya boleh ke?
Ya.
Doktor, yang saya join kelas dengan Madam Hafizah baru ni kan, dia kata let's say lah kalau macam kita beli satu shop lot yang dekat corner lot, then macam like kita nak tukar benda tu jadi bukan. Contohnya macam apa nama satu residential punya area, kita beli area corner lot dan kita tukarkan jadi office. Madam Hafizah kata kalau macam after 2 years macam tu usually boleh, tapi within kalau benda tu still dalam garanti kena comply kepada SNP tu kan. Okay, let's say kalau macam saya dah tukar okay, tapi contohnya kan kalau keadaan yang saya beli first building saya adalah satu kedai yang saya tukar saya nak cakap okay. Sebenarnya kan madam soalan saya macam relate dengan yang bajet 2021 tu yang dikata first buyer tu kan boleh exempt stamp duty. Tapi cuma saya nak tanya kalau macam saya beli kedai benda tu tidak tertakluk dah lah kan? Kira macam saya tidak masuk dalam kategori yang exemption tu dah lah kan?
Exemption tu rasanya saya tak tengok yang detail lagi exemption, tapi kalau dia first buyer dan dia relate to residential property under HDA tu, exemption for HDA meaning yang kedai tak akan tak dapat enjoy lah the benda tu.
Okey, tapi kata kalau saya beli kedai lepas tu saya tukarkan kepada rumah, kiranya saya pun dah exempted daripada exemption tu juga, betul tak?
Okey, untuk dia sebenarnya untuk change kategori ni dia ada dua isu lah. Pertamanya sebab kalau kita beli kedai biasanya tanah kita memang di atas commercial zone. Dan tiba-tiba kita nak tukar kepada rumah, satunya tanah kita tu dah bersalahan dengan use of building tu satu, ya. Tapi kita boleh mohon kepada PBT untuk tukar kegunaan daripada kedai kepada rumah. Tapi selalunya yang berlaku ialah daripada rumah kepada kedai lah. Yang selalu maksudnya kalau dekat Bangsa punya area tu banyak berlaku yang mana the bungalow lot because they are at the prime area, they want to convert the bungalow, rumah-rumah bungalow tu menjadi show house. Contohnya untuk showroom kepada business. Contohnya rumah bungalow tu they use sebagai showroom kepada kereta. So they are converting the residential use kepada commercial use. Tanah tu masih lagi tanah residential. So proses ni dia akan mohon kepada PBT untuk tukar kegunaan bangunan. Tukar kegunaan bangunan. So once the application approved, so nanti cukai tanah, cukai pintu dia akan berubah menjadi commercial rate instead of residential rate. Itu satulah. Tapi dan dia ada juga entertain, dia dipanggil temporary conversion. Temporary conversion maksudnya dia tak tukar lagi status tanah tu kepada commercial, tapi dia cuma tukar kegunaan rumah tu. Ya? Adakah saya menjawab soalan?
Ya.
Okey. Ada soalan lain? Okay. Kalau tak ada, kita tengok dua kes ni berkenaan dengan administrative fee imposed by the developer. Kes pertama ialah KAB Corporation, quite a new case tahun 2019. In this case, nanti you all boleh carilah kes ni. KAB Corporation Sdn Bhd and Master Platform Sdn Bhd. Master Platform is the developer. KAB ni ialah the owner of this office lot. Dia ada commercial building, office unit, dan KAB ni ada subsidiary company by the name of Impiana Sdn Bhd. So this subsidiary company actually want to apply loan from bank. So dia tak ada tanah. Impiana ni dia tak ada property, jadi dia guna asset KAB Corporation. So dalam situasi ni kita panggil apa? Kalau kita nak create a charge, land belongs to someone else but you are the borrower. Kita panggil apa transaction tu? Tanah, property milik KAB, Impiana yang nak buat loan dengan bank. So dia tak ada asset, dia pinjam KAB punya aset untuk dijadikan cagaran kepada pihak bank. So kita panggil
Date of assignment, madam.
Date of assignment. Okay. Tapi kita panggil
transaction.
Ya.
Mortgage transaction.
Okay, betul, tapi kita panggil dia third party charge, third party charge atau third party assignment. Sebab property milik orang lain, peminjamnya orang lain, third party. Kalau KAB yang tuan punya tanah, KAB yang pinjam loan, kita panggil first party assignment or first party charge. Tapi dalam kes ni peminjamnya orang lain, pemilik kedai or unit office tu orang lain. So this Impiana actually obtained a loan from this bank, 650,000. So because when we apply loan from bank actually request for the property as a security for the loan to be assigned to the bank. So bila ada assignment saja, jadi dia tertakluk kepada application for consent from the developer. Jadi KAB ni dia mohon consent pada developer sebab dia nak assign the office unit tu kepada pihak bank. So the developer in this case impose an administrative fee of 1% daripada the loan sum. 1% daripada the loan sum. So kalau 1% daripada 650,000 ialah berapa? Berapa? 1% daripada 650,000. 1% or 10% sekejap. Administrative fee of 1%.
RM65.
RM65.
6,500.
6,500.
Dia punya loan sum. Okay, sorry. The loan facility yang dia mohon daripada bank ialah 6.5 million. So the developer impose 1% on the 6.5 million. So amount dia jadi berapa?
650,000.
650,000? 1%.
65,000.
Ya?
65,000.
Jadi administrative fees requested by master platform untuk bagi consent kepada assignment tu untuk keluarkan satu surat ialah 65,000. So 65,000. So KAB Corporation initially they paid the amount 65,000 tu untuk get the consent from the developer, but later on they do not satisfied with the amount, excessive. So they bring the case to court. So they challenge the administrative fee imposed by the developer, saying that it is unreasonable. Sebab of course kita tengok because there is no quota yang tadi ataupun there is no specific amount saying how much the developer can charge you for the consent for the commercial property. Kalau residential tadi very clear cut, you boleh charge RM50 saja. Tapi yang ni developer ikut suka dia. In this case they charge even 1% out of 6.5 million. So the administrative fee tu amounting to 65,000. Saja-saja nak bayar kepada pemaju 65,000 untuk satu consent form, consent letter. So the purchaser did not satisfied with the amount. They bring the case to court, saying that the consent, the amount imposed by the developer is excessive. And some more, the delay on the issuance of the strata title tu is on the part of the developer. Projek ni dah lama, until now tak dapat lagi strata title. So since strata title tak dapat, the vendor ni kalau dia nak jual, dia mesti kena minta consent dengan pemaju. So it's not their fault. That is their argument. So the court in this case actually agree with the contention of the owner of the land, KAB Corporation, and decided that the amount is excessive and unreasonable, and some more the delay on obtaining the strata title tu is not on the purchaser side but on the developer side. And satu lagi reasoning dia ialah the process of issuance the consent letter, you just nak update record, nak maklumkan kepada orang ni siapa pemilik, apa status tanah tu sekarang, is very macam administrative punya proses. We just not involve any undertaking and so on. So the amount 65,000 tu sangat excessive. So so the court instead of bagi yang impose 65,000 tu court kata cuma RM500 saja. RM500 is reasonable for the issuance of developers consent. So tengok banyak beza dia di antara RM65,000 yang purchaser ni vendor ni kena bayar dengan court punya decision is only RM500 that can be imposed by the developer. So these are the the predicament lah faced by commercial property because they are not regulated by specific act. So ikut suka pemaju dia nak impose berapa amount of the administrative fee. Itu satu. KAB Corporation. Dan satu lagi ialah kes Lee Min Chong Sendian Berhad and Prudential Property Sendian Berhad. So dalam kes Lee Min Chong ni juga it involved the issue of administrative fee. The owner of this property, Lee Min Chong, they actually enter into a sub-sale transaction. Dia nak jual property dia. This is a shop office. Shop office juga. Kalau tak silap office lot juga. So they are selling this property to someone. They enter into sale and purchase agreement. So when they apply for consent from the developer reply to the vendor, Lee Min Chong dalam kes ni, and impose a lot of conditions. So dia kata kalau you nak jual property ni, kami boleh bagi consent tapi you kena buat A, B, C and D, settle outstanding sum and so on. Banyak conditions yang diimpose instead of the general condition yang ada dalam SMP tu. Maksudnya dalam SMP yang asal cuma ada 3 conditions. So bila Lee Min Chong want to sell the property to the other party, developer agreed to issue consent but with few other conditions. So due to this, Lee Min Chong cannot actually fulfill all the conditions. Then this actually affected the process of selling the property to the other party. Jadi prospective purchaser which want to buy this property cancel the sub-sale transaction. So now this vendor, the owner of the property, sue the developer for the additional consent imposed, additional condition imposed to obtain the consent. So the court also in this case decided in favor of the purchaser, whereby the court says that those additional consent cannot be imposed unless it is stated earlier in the principal SMP. So kalau memang dalam principal SMP tu dah kata ada 7 conditions that must be fulfilled untuk dapatkan consent, only the 7 is applicable. Tak boleh bila you nak apply consent you tambah lagi condition-condition yang lain. So that was the decision in Lee Min Chong Sendian Berhad and Prudential Property Sendian Berhad. So these are the issues faced by the commercial buyer or commercial owner when they want to sell the property to the other party. So this issue is no longer faced by the residential property because of the section 22D tadi. So that is the difference lah. Okay, ada soalan sebelum kita move on to some of the issues related to purchase of issues relating to purchase from housing developer? Ada soalan lain?
Berapakah bilangannya rukun solat?
Okay. Ada soalan tak ada? Okay. Kalau tak ada soalan, saya proceed dengan beberapa issues buying from the developer. Yang tadi kita dah go through section 22D on the effect of 22D. Okay, now we are looking at the commencement date of the contract. When does time for delivery of vacant possession actually start to run? Ini satu isu yang unsettled because ada case yang kata it start from the date of sale and purchase agreement. Ada juga kata start from the date of deposit collects from the developer. So there are 2 different views by the court on these issues. Kita tahu completion date for the property either 24 months ataupun 36 months. So schedule G untuk landed property 24 bulan. So kalau untuk schedule H ialah 36 bulan. So if the property is delivered after this due date, the purchaser is actually entitled to claim for late ascertained damages kita bincang tadi. So ada dua pandangan court mengenai isu ni. Ada case yang decided that the date of to calculate the completion period start from the date of the collection of deposit. Selalunya when we want to buy property from developer, kita pergi ke showroom tu, kita berminat dengan satu unit, dan developer akan kata, okay cik, you boleh letak booking fee RM1,000 ataupun RM500, so we lock this unit untuk you, so nanti you bayar the baki tu bila you sign the SMP. So contohnya you bayar RM500 booking fee tu hari ni, mungkin you ambil masa dalam 2 minggu nak search whether you are eligible for loan and so on. Mungkin a week after that baru you pergi sign SMP, which meaning you bayar the balance of the deposit. Okay, so isunya when we should when the completion date start to run, adakah daripada date you bayar booking fee ataupun daripada date you sign the sale and purchase agreement. So kita tengok dalam kes ni, PJD Regency Sdn Bhd and Tribunal Tuntutan Pembeli Rumah and others, nanti citation dia cari sebab saya tak sempat nak tengok tadi. The time for delivery of vacant possession start from the date of the purchaser paid the booking fee. Dalam kes ni court kata the time for delivery of VP start from the date of the purchasers paid the booking fee. Last slide. Okay, so purchaser paid booking fee of RM 10,000 on 16 January 2013. SPA executed on 21st March 2013. So ada beza dalam lebih kurang beberapa hari lah daripada tarikh booking fee dengan SPA executed. Vacant possession delivered on 23rd January 2017. So ada delay dekat sini. Nanti boleh tengok the full case. So dalam kes ni the court held it is settled law that the ascertain of liquidated damages for late delivery of vacant possession start to run from the date of the payment of booking fee and not the date of signing of the SPA. Okay, dia kata clause 1 of the SPA indicates that payment of the booking fee accepted by the developer constitute offer and acceptance, and the debt parties to assume responsibility to fulfill their part of the bargain. Meaning to say, in this case, the court said that once you paid the booking fee, your 24 months start to run. 24 months start to run, not the date of the SPA, because the court was of the view that once you paid the booking fee, the responsibility of the party start to run, and if the date of the SPA were to be taken as the relevant date, the developer would be allowed to arbitrarily pick any dates they favor to execute the SPA, which would prejudice the purchaser's interest. So this is the court reasoning. Court kata kalau kita ikut date SPA tu, meaning you bayar booking fee hari ni, mungkin developer saja nak lambatkan tempo tu, dia mungkin delaykan sikit signing of the SPA tu another 1 month. So if we allow this, the court said that it will actually prejudice the purchaser's interest. Ini kes pun agak baru juga, PJD Regency ni. Tak silap 2017 macam tu. Okay, so ini satu court punya stand, kata it start from the date of the booking fee. Okay. Then in this case, the court follow the earlier decisions dalam kes Ho, Si, Sen and another and Public Bank Berhad dan juga Faber Union. Dan ada satu kes yang lain juga, Lim Ahfah and others and Seri Maju Sdn Bhd also decided that the completion period of the 24 months started to run from the date of the deposit was paid. So this is the one view of it. So now kita tengok another case yang decided otherwise. Dalam kes GHJ Avenue Sdn Bhd, and Tribunal Tuntutan Pembeli Rumah and others. Dalam kes ni, the court was of the view that the completion period start from the date of the signing of the SPA, bukan tarikh booking fee. Okay, the purchaser had purchased 3 bungalow units in the project. Booking fee paid on 24th October. Remaining 10% deposit paid on 13 December 2011. But the SPA was signed 13 February 2012. So ada gap beberapa bulan daripada tarikh bayar deposit dengan signing of the SPA. Vacant possession has to be delivered within 24 months from the date of the agreement. Vacant possession was delivered on 14 February 2014. So kalau kita ikut signing of the SPA, dia tak ada delay sangat. Dia tak ada delay. Tapi kalau kita ikut payment of the booking fee, dia ada delay out of 24 months tu. Sebab the booking fee was paid on 24th October 2011. The court in this case held that it is clear that and ambiguous that the actual date of LAD, late ascertained damages, is to be calculated from the date of the SPA, not from the date of the booking fee. The court followed the case of Kompo Bina Holdings Sdn Bhd and Tuntutan Pembeli Rumah Sdn Bhd. So ada 2 decisions yang berbeza berkenaan dengan ini. This is actually the issue of the interpretation of the word agreement. Sebab dalam section 20 dalam SMP tu dia kata 24 months from the date of the agreement. Jadi the term agreement tu adakah sale and purchase of agreement ataupun actually the agreement at the stage of the booking of the units. That's why the court come with different interpretation of the word agreement tu. Okay. And adding to the confusion is another case, Sri Damansara Sdn Bhd and Woon Kuan Chen another. Ini pun kes agak baru 2019 kalau tak silap. Kita cari balik ya. Dalam kes ni, the Court of Appeal affirmed the decision in PJD Regency case. Ya. Maksudnya, court dalam kes ni, dalam kes dari Sri Damansara, follow that the completion date kena start daripada booking fee. Ya, booking fee of the unit. Ya. However, the court also observed that that the collection of the booking fee or deposit is actually repugnant of the HDA and yet still give legal force to the day of the booking fee. Actually, ni kita tengok isu dia, collection of the booking fees ni, is it legal? Soalan dia satunya, is it legal? Kalau kita tengok Housing Development Regulation, the collection of booking fees is not allowed. It's not allowed. No person, including parties acting as stakeholders, shall collect any payment of whatever name called except as prescribed by the contract of sale. So, kata no person, including parties acting as stakeholders, shall collect any payment of whatever name called except as prescribed by the contract of sale. So, kalau kita refer pada Schedule G or Schedule H, the amount that should be paid ialah pada upon signing of the SPA. The statutory SPA provides that the first 10% of the purchase price is only payable immediately upon signing of the SPA. So, if we interpret this Regulation 11(2), there is no such things as booking fees. Because the first payment that you need to pay ialah 10% deposit yang mesti dibayar upon signing of the SPA. Tapi itulah bila kita tengok cases yang tadi, masih ada different interpretation by the court with regards to the commencement date and also the legality of the booking fees. So kalau kita tengok kes ni, Sri Damansara kata legal correction of booking fees tu ialah satu kesalahan. But dia decide the commencement of the completion date must start from the date of the booking fee. So ada macam sedikit confusion in the case. Okay. So ada soalan dekat di sini berkenaan dengan booking fees?
Madam, untuk vacant possession to be delivered, is it varied according to agreement ataupun is there any fixed period for the vacant possession to be delivered?
Okay, kalau kita follow, actually there is a specific period to be the vacant possession to be hand over to the purchaser. Kalau you beli landed property and we are using schedule G ataupun schedule I lah kalau yang build and sell tu, dia punya kalau landed property sahaja, rumah yang di atas tanah, sama ada dia dah ada individual title ke atau belum individual title, tapi rumah tu memang attached kepada tanah, dia punya completion period adalah 24 bulan. 2 tahun. Maksudnya dalam tempoh 2 tahun, pemaju mesti siapkan rumah tu dan bagi kunci dekat you. Kalau you beli rumah yang strata ratified, sama ada build and sell or sell and build, tempoh yang diberi kepada pemaju to complete the house ialah 36 month. Tapi kalau kita tengok dalam few cases ni, ada juga yang SMP period tu 36 month, kita nampak dia SMP period dalam dia punya agreement ialah 42 bulan dan sebagainya. So I assume that they in this situation the developer actually have apply for the extension of time untuk period completion period tu. Sebab saya perasan ada beberapa case yang kita nampak dia beli strata property tapi completion dia period dia bukanlah 36 month. Sometimes it states 42 months and so on. But the statutory period ialah 24 atau 36, the completion period. So if you deliver beyond the period provided, then the next day yang lambat tu terus saja pemaju kena bayar you ganti rugi, denda lambat bayar yang dipanggil late ascertained damages. Okay?
Okay, thank you, Madam.
Okay, so now kita balik pada another issue, ada 2 saja lagi issue. What is the effect if an agreement has been entered into in breach of the HDR? Tadi pun saya ada soal tadi. Apa kesan dia kalau agreement tu, you enter into agreement with the developer, but the developer actually had breached the Housing Development Act. This is happened in Becca, Malaysia, Sdn Bhd and Tan Chong Kuan and another. The developer in this case had collected deposit without a developer's license in breach of the HDR. It was held that a purchaser at her or his election was entitled to avoid the agreement and claim for refund the deposit since the developer has not obtained the necessary license and permit at the time of the collection of the deposit. An infringement of the HDR would render the housing developer liable for penalty on conviction. However, such infringement would not invalidate the agreement. Sama macam kes yang Audrey di Souza tu. Maksudnya dalam kes ni, pemaju ni, dia belum lagi mohon lesen daripada KPKT. Dia adalah housing developer. Dia sepatutnya mohon lesen dan permit jualan dulu, baru dia boleh offer to sell the unit. Tapi in this case, before they obtain the license and permit to sell the unit, developer ni had started collecting deposit from purchaser. So by doing so, the developer actually had breached the Housing Development Regulation and Housing Development Act. So the question dalam issue ni ialah, what is the status of the agreement between the developer who had breached the statutory the law and the agreement tu. So dalam kes ni court kata the status of the agreement is valid at the option of the purchaser, sama ada dia nak bayar ataupun tidak. An infringement of the HDR will render the housing developer liable for penalty on conviction, maknanya dalam kes ni because they are offering to sell the unit before obtaining the license, they have actually apa ni, itulah they had actually breached the akta, but it does not invalidate the agreement. Okay. Lastly, a breach by housing developer of the term of statutory SPA will make the agreement void. However, the purchaser will not make the agreement void. However, the purchaser is entitled to rescind the contract. Yeah? So dalam kes ni sama, in this case, the developer failed to deliver vacant possession within the statutory 24 months. Since the intention of the parties was at the time was the essence, the buyer was entitled pursuant to section 56 of the Contract Act to rescind the contract. So dalam kes ni, will not make the agreement void, bukan will make the agreement void, tidak menjadikan agreement itu batal. So let's say the developer after the 24 months or 36 months still fail to deliver you the vacant possession, it does not automatically actually make the agreement void. It still ada the option of the purchaser untuk batalkan agreement tu ataupun tidak, because under the akta, after the 24 months or 36 months, but developers still can continue completing the property, but they have to pay the purchaser with the late ascertained damages. Okay, so I think that's all untuk slide hari ini. Ada apa-apa soalan berkenaan dengan issues which relates to the buy and sell from developer? Of course banyak lagi isu-isu yang berkaitan lah, tapi these are some of the issues that I think I would like to highlight lah in the lecture. Okay, ada soalan?
Kemudian saya ada soalan.
Okay.
Kemudian kan sekarang kan kita belajar tajuk buying from non-housing developer kan? Tapi maksudnya even though dia bukan housing developer, still dia tertakluk bawah HPA ni.
Okay, yang tajuk atas tu yang because dia sebenarnya bukan. Kalau dia bukan housing developer, dia memang tak tertakluk kepada HDA lah. Tapi ini ialah isu yang saya highlight kat sini ialah berkaitan dengan yang first lecture yang minggu lepas, because tajuk minggu lepas dengan tajuk minggu ni dia interrelated lah. Dia bukan bermaksud bila once you buying from non-housing developer, automatically clauses under HDA tu tak terpakai pada dia. Maknanya kalau you buying from non-housing developer, contohnya you beli dengan pemaju yang buat kediaman 3 unit sahaja. So dia tak akan guna statutory SMP. So tadi we are talking about statutory SMP ni, dia ada completion period dia ada regulation about booking fees. Tapi kalau bukan pemaju perumahan, dia maknanya they are not bound by all these regulations. Maknanya kalau dia nak collect booking fees, they can do that. It is legal for them. Tapi kalau dia jual, kalau projek tu di bawah housing apa ni, di bawah HDA, you beli dengan pemaju perumahan, you cannot collect the booking fees tu. Sebab the first payment that need to be made ialah pada masa signing of the SPA. Walaupun the collection of booking fees ni memang common practice lah among the developers. Biasanya you akan pergi tengok unit tu, you nak berminat, dia akan minta you letak deposit RM500 ke RM1,000 ke, just to make sure that you are really serious in buying the property. Isunya ialah bila you tak jadi beli rumah tu, what happen to your booking fees ni? Adakah is refundable ataupun macam mana? Itu adalah itu memang selalu akan jadi dispute lah. So masa nak letak booking fee tu pun you must make clear what happened to the booking fee sekiranya you tak jadi nak beli, ya. Contohnya kalau pemaju tu kata okay, you can put booking fee RM500, tapi kalau puan atau tuan tak sign agreement dalam masa seminggu daripada tarikh booking fee ni, automatically RM500 ni kami akan forfeit. Then you have to think lah about it whether you want to put or not the booking fee. Tapi kalau contohnya dia kata okay, booking fee ni kalau tuan tak jadi beli pun kita akan refund, dan maybe it is safer for you to put the booking fee. So booking fee ni memang satunya dia satu kesalahan di bawah SDA, tapi dia menjadi satu common practice lah. Memang developer untuk macam lock the unit untuk you sebagai macam okay, unit ni dah ada orang booking. So dia akan jadi isu bila tiba-tiba you tak jadi beli dan sebagainya lah. Okay, boleh Anis? Atin?
Boleh Miriam. Mungkin Miriam.
Okay, ada apa-apa lagi yang lain?
Miriam. Akhirnya the current position for issue booking fee, I mean the of delivery of vacant position tu kita follow yang mana Madam?
Itulah dia masih
masih lagi ambiguous lah.
Dia masih lagi ambiguous, dan ini actually ada satu write up daripada Zico lah, Zaid Ibrahim and Co berkenaan dengan commentaries on this decision ni. So saya baca daripada dalam tu dia kata we have to wait kalau lah yang PD kes Seri Damansara tu they bring to appeal court, then we will know the position later on. Tapi sekarang ni sebab kes-kes ni masih one after another tu dia agak baru 2017, 2018, so position yang mana yang terakhir lah. So maknanya sebab tu salah satu recommendation untuk avoid this confusion ni ialah dalam statutory agreement tu 24 months from the date of the agreement tu dicadangkan untuk ditambah 24 months from the date of the sale and purchase agreement. So tak ada lagi interpretation lain bagi the word agreement tu. Sebab kalau tak, court masih lagi macam open to say that agreement tu mungkin ialah the booking fee punya stage, bukan the signing of the SPA punya stage tu. Ya? Hamid?
Okay, faham. Lagi satu, is it booking fee tu sama dengan 10% deposit tu?
Okay,
or is it a different transaction?
Okay, booking fee tu biasanya dia part of the 10% deposit. Contohnya you beli the house 100,000, so the first 10% masa you nak kena sign SMP tu sepatutnya you bayar 10% deposit. So let's say 10% deposit tu ialah 10,000. So masa you beli, you pergi ke pejabat pemaju tu you dah bayar booking fee 1,000. So masa signing tu you cuma bayar lagi baki 9,000. So dia make out of the 10% deposit tu.
Okay. Faham.
Okay, that's why macam untuk isu booking fee ni dia dah lama menjadi satu isu lah dalam buy and sell of property ni. So ada latest article by House Buyers Associations, they propose to legalize the booking fee sebab memang dah jadi common practice, tapi dia sesuatu yang illegal. So what they propose ialah to legalize the booking fee untuk jadi dia macam option to purchase. Option to purchase meaning you letak certain amount of money, so you are given a clear cut of time period bila mana you nak proceed ke tak nak proceed dengan purchase tu. So dan ada clauses yang jelas mengenai sama ada booking amount tu akan be refunded ataupun forfeited by the developer. So itu lebih baiklah daripada status dia yang tak clear dan masih lagi diamalkan oleh pemaju lah. Yeah. Okay.
Faham. Last question from me. Okay. Kalau we buy property from non-housing developer, we know that the agreement dia akan jadi 3+1 punya agreement kan madam? So kalau macam kalau kita beli property daripada developer, kita boleh minta extension of time. the developer boleh minta extension of time from the ministry. Then kalau kita beli rumah daripada, kalau non housing developer ni, dia minta extension of time tu based on mutual agreement from the parties lah.
Okay. Untuk non-housing developer ni pun kita kena clear juga. Okay, it depends on whether you beli property yang dah completed atau dalam progress payment. Kalau yang completed property tu, maksudnya you beli daripada pemaju satu unit office yang dah siap. Okay, kalau yang dah siap tu biasanya 3+1 punya agreement. So 3+1 punya agreement biasanya sebab property tu dah siap, 3 bulan campur 1 tu ialah proses untuk pindah milik, daftar kat pejabat tanah. We don't wait for the property to be completed. Okay, itu clear. So kalau kat situ, kalau contohnya dia tak ada issue of completion of property lah because property dah siap. Cuma kalau proses tu delay, dia ada penalty imposed by the penalty imposed by either party, siapa yang lambat dalam transaksi tu. Itu satu. Yang kedua, ada juga property yang kita beli dengan non-housing developer yang masih lagi dalam progress construction. Contohnya you beli satu unit office yang masih lagi dalam proses pembinaan. So dalam proses pembinaan, so 3+1 tu tak terpakai. So proses pembinaan, mungkin pemaju sebab dia dalam proses pembinaan unit office tu, so dia mungkin letak property ni akan siap dalam masa 1.5 tahun ataupun 48 bulan. Itu pun ada senario yang kedua lah. Maknanya bukan saja 3+1 punya transaction, tapi juga ada property yang under progressive construction yang mana completion period dia boleh jadi 2 tahun, 3 tahun, 4 tahun, 5 tahun. But they are not bound by the regulation yang kata 2 tahun ke 3 tahun tu. So maksudnya in this scenario, pemaju boleh letak contohnya unit office yang dia bina cuma 6 lot. Dan dia rasa dia boleh siap property tu dalam masa setahun. So dia letak dalam agreement tu the completion period of the shop lot, shop office is 12 months. Ataupun kalau dia bina mungkin unit kedai atau office sebanyak 60 unit dan dia rasa dia perlukan 5 tahun untuk siapkan 60 unit ni, dia boleh letak kat situ 5 years completion period. Because they are not subjected to any regulation yang mengatakan kena siap 2 tahun atau 3 tahun. So the completion period depends on the developer to determine dan subject to you punya agreement lah. Kalau you rasa you boleh tunggu 5 tahun untuk beli unit kedai ni daripada pemaju, then you may sign the agreement.
Okay, faham. Thank you, madam.
Okay. Okay, ada soalan lain? Ada? Tak ada? Kalau tak ada, I think kita berhenti dekat sini dulu. Saya sebenarnya nak pergi kepada satu lagi slide tapi hasilnya tak sempat lah untuk habiskan. So if there is no more questions, then I think that's all for today. Hopefully you can digest it. Ada macam dia tak adalah complicated tapi banyak benda lah, banyak isu yang dalam buy and sell from the developer ni. Dan rasanya untuk minggu ni kita dah habislah cover yang buying from housing developer and buying from non-housing developer. InsyaAllah minggu depan kita dah boleh masuk kepada sub-sale transaction and so on. Itu sahaja untuk minggu ini. Okay, sekejap sebelum saya lupa, saya nak download attendance dulu. Okay, so that's all. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh.
Thank you, madam.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.